Happy holidays! Hi, I'm Holly, I'm a writer, and I thought that today I would just talk about my introduction to Formula One, how I got into it. If you don't know me, I I wrote a book about Formula One. It's book one of a trilogy, and I have like a plan for four books in the same world. Um, but they're about Formula One. So I thought I would talk about how I got into Formula One when the journey and like why I think it's kind of funny and crazy, but also why it makes sense that I would write a book about Formula One because I'll get into it. But basically, I'm going to try and get through this fairly quickly because I don't want to drag it out too long. It is literally just not that much of a story. So we're going to start. We're going to start when I'm like 6 years old. Don't. But basically, when I was like young, I used to go and stay with one of my aunts and uncles. I never had grandparents, so they were basically like my grandparents. I would go and stay with them regularly. And essentially, the reason why that's important is because a few of my uncles like Formula One. One of the ones who liked it is the one who I would go and stay with. And so I would be there during the weekends, obviously, because I was a kid, I had like school and stuff. And so I would go and stay on the weekend, and he would sometimes watch Formula One, and apparently I would sit on his knee and watch with him. Now, I don't remember that. I remember a lot about the stuff that we did when I went over there regularly. Like, I remember a lot, actually. But I don't remember specifically Formula One. However, what I do remember, and I have this really weird nostalgia for, is the Formula One era from that time. Like, I see the cars, I see the drivers, I hear the music that would play because it was before they had the official theme, so it was just the one that was like on TV at the time. I see that stuff, and I am just like, it's so familiar to me and it's weird, right? And it's like that specific, like 10-year-ish stretch. Now, the reason why that's important is because I think that it is important to understand the sort of history there. But we're gonna skip forward a bit. So when I was 17, I was in college. In the UK, college is like, it's when you're like 17, 18, well, 16, 18, I was 17 because I actually started a year somewhere else and then was like, you know what, actually I don't want to be at this school anymore. So I moved, and I went when I was 17, 18 and 19. So I was with some of my friends who I'm still friends with, and a bunch of them liked Formula One. One of them particularly, he loved Formula One, and I still didn't start watching it. Okay? I still didn't start watching it. I was just like, okay, cool. It's cool that you like it. That's great. So we skip forward again. This time I'm 20, nearly 21, about a month away from being 21. And it's 2023. I don't know exactly how long before I started watching I had like started seeing stuff, but I had started seeing TikToks of like the drivers, specifically the Ferrari drivers, which makes sense for reasons I'll get into. But like I had started seeing like little clips. I'd seen the F1 animated on TikTok, and it just like, the more that I thought about it, the more I was like, why? Like, this sounds kind of fun actually. Like, this sport seems interesting, and I would think about it and I'd be like, why have I never thought about watching it before? Like, I literally knew that it existed. I knew that there were people my age who liked it. I liked Top Gear growing up. I liked, watching programs about similar sort of stuff. Why had I never gotten into it? And so I decided I am going to just watch Formula One now. And that was it. That was it. It was literally just like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Ferrari specifically, the reason why that's like a team, there are two reasons. Both are kind of silly reasons. The first is that my favorite car of all time, my like dream car, is a Ferrari. There are a lot of very beautiful Ferraris. I don't think that that's like it's not a controversial thing. But my dream car that I've wanted since I was like 8 years old, which is about as long as it has existed, is a Ferrari. And it's like the car that, like, I'm aiming to have that car one day, you know? Even if it like bankrupts me, I want that car. And so obviously I'm gonna be a Ferrari fan. But also I think that a lot more stupid of a reason is I'm a Liverpool fan, football, and they're red. And so when I think about sports, the teams that I support, they're red. They're red. They're red teams. I know that that's like really dumb. I really do. But it just like is a thing. So for example, in baseball, I haven't watched a baseball game ever in my life. I think I would probably quite like it because I like sports where you hit a thing and then you like run, you know? I love the movement. I love playing games like that. But I would have been like a Boston fan, like a Red Sox fan, because red and also the Sox is really cute. So with Ferrari, it's red and it's Ferrari. So obviously that's the team that I'm gonna support. And also the driver that I started out liking was Carlos Sainz. Obviously Junior, who I don't know, he just seemed fun. So I was like, yeah, he'll be my fave. And the first race that I ever watched, and I kind of take this as fate, right? Because it's 2023, right? That's the year that I got into it. The first race that I watched, the first qualifying and stuff that I watched, was Singapore 2023. Now, imagine you're me, and you decide that you're going to start watching this sport that you know nothing about, just because you think that you're going to like it, and because you're like, it's like, why have I never gone into this before? I should just try it, right? You watch qualifying, and your favourite driver gets pole. The other driver from your team comes third in qualifying. And the guy in second, and I actually have a clip because I was talking to my friend, I'll insert this into the video. But the guy who comes second does this fun little thing where he taps the guy's shoulder with the microphone on the way to the interviews. And you're like, that's funny. That's fun. That's cute. Hi. Hi, Cookie. A little Christmas cookie. So you're in that sort of place where you're just like, wow, this is crazy. You then watch the race and the guy wins, and he wins in a really interesting way by, if you don't know about Singapore 2023, look into it. It is really interesting the way that he did that. The very famous message of "it's on purpose." And then you know, the guy crashes out on the last lap. You later find out from, you know, very intensely being interested in this sport now. You follow like a bunch of the teams, the drivers. You are like on TikTok getting edits and stuff. You see an edit of, I think it was on Instagram, I'll try and find it, of this driver that won the race being teammates and friends with the guy that came second, who he used as like a human shield, and who they helped each other to get the positions that they got in that race. And it just is like, there's a sort of history there that makes that race more special for them. You then talk to your friend who's like, oh, I've just caught up with the race because I was busy all day, and yeah, that was actually a really good race, like that was a really good one. And then that's how you find out that this other guy has been winning like every race that season. And then the next race that you watch, I think it was the next race, I don't know, is a really cool circuit, and the guy wins the world championship and he's back on form and you see him win. By Vegas 2023, I cried, not a lot, but a little bit, when Charles Leclerc got a third place. It was a great race. That race, by the way, Las Vegas 2023, everyone was so angry with the track, and rightly so. I'm still angry with the way that they penalised their drivers. for the grids being like, it's just insane to me that they still haven't learned how to keep a grid in the ground, and yet they will punish people for having to fix their car from the damage that is received as a result of their negligence. It's crazy. I'm not going to get into that, but it was a really interesting race weekend, and the race was really fun, and there was a lot of overtakes. That sort of stress of, is the Ferrari going to overtake Checo or not? It was just really fun. I was like, by that point, after like 2 months, I was in deep, okay? This is important because 2 years later, I watched the Singapore Grand Prix as a George Russell fan. I know that there were going to be a lot of people who are like, those exist? Yes. And I support his rights and his wrongs, actually. It was actually really awful for me when he was fighting with Max about this time last year, because I like both of them, and I was like, oh my god, stop. Watching them on track and like I was like, Max, George, stop. It was a lot. I was like fighting for my life. And like seeing him win that race 2 years on, when I didn't even know 2 years ago that he was going to become my favourite driver. I didn't understand the significance of me. It felt like fate. It felt like I started watching at the right time. It felt like I started watching at a time when things were getting more interesting, more sort of competitive on the grid. And it felt like it was really easy for me to get into it because of the online presence of people, and because of the ability to look up things that I didn't understand, look up when they were starting. And then that December, I came up with the idea during the winter break for writing a book. And then in January, I started planning it. And in June of 2024, I started actually writing it. And before my 1 year anniversary of watching the sport, I had finished my first draft. It just felt like it worked out very well, like everything that has happened. And it's one of those things where I'm really grateful that it did come into my life when it did. I'm really grateful that I gave it a chance. I've gotten my mum into it since as well. She's a huge fan. She's a Lewis Hamilton fan first and foremost. She is therefore a Ferrari fan, but she is like suffering because like I didn't know what to expect. She still has hope. I warned her and she still has hope. It's fine. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it is, first of all, because I think it's really fun to talk about how you went to Formula One. But also I think it's kind of interesting because I did very quickly go from not knowing anything to writing a book about it. Here's the thing. I'm autistic, and when I say like I hyperfixated on this, I don't mean that in like the cutesy TikTok way. I mean it in the sense that like it was everything that I thought about for like months. And then it fell off a little bit, and it's back. And it's back because I'm writing my book about Formula One. And every time I watch a race, I think about everything. I understand strategy now. I didn't really understand a lot of things to begin with. I do now. I understand all of the different flags. I understand all of the different, like, you know, stuff. Obviously, the rules change, so it's, you know, but like, I have come to understand things, I would say, very well, especially for somebody who has never been to a physical race, which I would like to one day, but obviously they're not the most accessible thing ever. I just think that there's a lot to be said about how quickly I got into it, and the way that I'm going to show you my cat at the end of this video because she's just done something very cute. But basically I think that it is interesting to think that there's a lot of stigma around women, especially, right, in Formula One. And my book deals a lot with this woman who is a Formula One driver, but she's a very stereotypical woman. That's on purpose. She is, I always call it girly pop, right? Because it's, I think there are still a lot, even of like women as usual, who they think that women aren't allowed to talk about Formula One in this way or that way without it being, you know, a negative thing. I think that we should be able as women to have spaces within Formula One where we feel comfortable to talk about things that matter to us that aren't necessarily just Formula One. I'm not saying that I think that we should be making edits of drivers in like a romantic way. I personally, I don't know, I think Basically what I'm trying to say is that my whole book is supposed to be a safe space for women in Formula One, and it's not just for women, you know. I think she's playing with a wire. I think that's what's happening because she's making noise. Sorry. But basically, I wanted this book to be a safe space for women, especially in Formula One, for queer people who like Formula One, because I do think that there's still a lot of the stigmas around that. And I think that while there is stuff being done, sometimes it does feel a little bit like almost a participation trophy rather than like actual progress. And sort of like how greenwashing is a thing that companies do to seem like they're being like it feels at times very much like they're like, see, we gave you the Formula One Academy, so like, you happy now? And it's like, no. No, that should be a jumping point, and it isn't. Like, there are women in Formula like 3, for example, who haven't gone into the F1 Academy, and they are higher up in the sort of like the classifications than the women who have won F1 Academy. And I don't think that that is necessarily like the easiest thing to fix. I know that there are a lot of people who are like, well, women just aren't good enough. I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that statistically could possibly be true, considering the like percentage of women versus men. Like, there are so many issues. There's the class issue. There's, you know, you look at Charles Leclerc. I'm pretty sure his brother, he's spoken before about how his brother wasn't allowed to do karting because they had to focus on one of them because it was just like too expensive and stuff. And that's Charles Leclerc. Like, I think that it literally, imagine that you can't afford to do karting, but you have the potential to be like the next Lewis Hamilton, for example. It just is really sad. And I that is like one of the things, right, that I'm gonna get comfy. 1 second. I just think that there is a lot that can be said about the sport, and that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make it like make it a habitable place for fans to sort of go and talk about this and not feel like they're fighting with each other. There are people who just don't know what they're talking about and they spread hate and stuff, and it's really sad. And again, like, I've learned very quickly about it, and that's like why I wrote the book, right? Was because I was obsessed. I was like deep in like learning everything. I've read books, I've watched like documentary stuff, been there, right? You know, and I'm still like very much in it. And I just think that there, you know, my book is supposed to be accessible to newer fans. If there's stuff that you don't understand, it will either explain it or it's something that you can Google and it'll give a very easy explanation. There are things that it shows that maybe you wouldn't think about, like the sort of way that social media impacts drivers and their mental health, which is starting to be a bigger topic. But even so, I feel like there are still people who don't accept that criticism is different from hate. Basically what I'm trying to say, and I'm going to wrap this up because I'm going to go in circles. But basically, I got into the sport very late in my life. Like, comparatively, like, I'm not that old, 2 years, you know? But that doesn't mean that I'm less of a fan, and I think a huge part of my book is to create a space for people who, you know, either haven't been watching for very long or they've been watching for a long time, but they're still being devalued as fans by other people. They're still being told that they're not a true fan because they don't necessarily understand this thing, or because they say like one thing that is technically not true, or just because of their gender. And I think that it aims to be something that you can read and enjoy, because I am somebody who was really grateful for the internet and the people who made like fun edits and stuff, who helped me understand who these drivers were and all of the different teams and the names of them and the names of the drivers. Like, that stuff made it so much easier for me to sort of wade into it rather than just being thrown into the deep end. And as a result of that, I was able to fairly quickly pick up the rules and the regulations and the reason why this person got disqualified, the reason why this person got a penalty, the reason why this person pitted at this lap, and to the point that I'm now able to go, well, this person's going to pit at this lap for this tyre, and this person's going to pit this lap for this tyre because they're on these strategies, because that's what makes sense for them to do. And if they don't do that, I'm like, well, that was stupid. And I think to this day, the only time that I've been wrong about that was Ferrari at Monza last year, and I was sobbing for that. That was so brilliant. I love that. And I'm glad that I was wrong. I'm glad that my anger at the team was unjustified, because what a win, right? I don't know. I wanted to come and talk about it because I think that, you know, the reason why I wrote the books was because of the passion, but also with a very intentional key sort of details pointing towards like, hey, it's okay if you don't know everything. It's okay if you like things that make you less of a fan in the eyes of these people, because that's just not how it works. And that's fine. And it is a healthier, I think the thing that sticks with me a lot is the Sebastian Vettel quote where he's talking about how the drivers, they're not just rivals on track anymore. They do stuff together away from the track. Their relationships are a lot stronger and more sort of natural, and how it's a lot healthier. And I'm paraphrasing, I'll try and find it, but I think about that a lot, because that's what I've aimed to do with this book, is to show what could be in Formula One, a world where women, where queer people, where more racial diversity could be just something that happens. And, you know, it starts very small, but in the last book, there's going to be a lot more diversity in the grid than in the first book. And it's supposed to sort of ease you into this sort of, not like a utopia, but a less awful version of this world, which has sort of, you know, blossomed through the nurturing of this diversity and through the encouragement of other people joining the sport, even if they aren't a real fan, because I think that's important. And I just want to talk about this because I do think that there are a lot of people who would maybe in the future discredit me for writing a book within a year of me starting to watch the sport. But I don't think that it should, and I think that's kind of the whole point of the book, is that you shouldn't judge other fans based off of like, well, I've watched it since I was this age, you know? Like, that sort of attitude is something that I've noticed a lot towards especially like Drive to Survive fans, and they'll say that about people who have like a completely valid opinion that they got from like watching the race. So I wanted to write a book because I thought it would be fun, but also I saw it as an opportunity to spread more of what I want to see in the world, and maybe criticize a bit of the stuff that I don't like. And so yeah, I hope that was fun as like a little explanation. I'm going to show you my cat now, but I'm going to say goodbye because I don't want to, you know. So thank you for watching. Bye.